Hello, everyone, and welcome back to They Don't Teach This in Law School. I'm your host, Charlie Mann of law firm Alchemy, and it's going to be the second week in a row in which you get to enjoy one of the country's earliest affectations and accents. I have another Bostonian here, so we're following up Len Spada with the estate planning side of the Boston area. Someone I've known for a long time, an all-around good dude, someone who, if you're an estate planning firm owner, you definitely should know him. Honestly, if you're any firm owner, you should get to know him. He's a joy to be around. He's running a really cool practice up in the Boston area, working hard to expand it. I'm sure we're going to get into all of it. A friend and someone I've been working with for a while now, Mike Monteforte. Mike, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for inviting me on. I'm pumped.
So am I. So, Mike, we'll kick it off with the question. What is one thing they don't teach you in law school?
Well, I will tell you, the main thing that I've been working on in my practice lately is how to be a CEO and be less of an attorney. I've been an attorney for 22 years. At this point, where I'm trying to go with my practice is really trying to step back from the lawyering and kind of take my lawyer hat off and put my CEO hat on and really run the practice as a CEO as opposed to a practicing attorney. And everything in law school is about, theory and casework and how to be a lawyer. But there's nothing about, hey, at some point, do you want to dial this back? And do you want to be a CEO, which is what I want to do.
So I'm curious, Mike. Let's start with a little bit of origin story here, because I think it's so informative, because we're definitely going to talk about identity and how that plays a role in all of this. What made you want to become a lawyer?
So it was something that I think I probably wanted for the wrong reasons when I was younger. I had a very straight path. I went directly from high school to undergrad, knowing that I was going to be a lawyer and go to law school and straight on to law school. And I think when I was a junior in high school, I decided I was going to be an attorney. And I think it was just because I wanted to be cool. I was
okay. I did not see that answer coming, Mike.
watching movies on TV and Tom Cruise and all these these lawyers making legal history in the courtroom, and I kind of said, I could do that. And so that's where it first, I think, started. As I started thinking about it, I think that'd be really cool. I love that idea. So let me go that way. And then the more I got into it, and I did my internship at the State House here in Massachusetts and watched bills being signed into law. And the more I kind of got into it, the more I realized, wow, this really is something that I want. And I had a fascination with the law, with the legal process, the concept of people achieving justice. And so it went from that, wow, I just want to be cool, to, hey, there really are some things here that I'm interested in and that I want to help people with.
Okay, so we have, I guess, in some ways that leads well into the identity discussion. There was a cool factor. I'm associating myself with the law where there seem to be figures of prominence, whether in pop culture or in the news. It's like, oh, wow, these people have power. These people have maybe even a certain joie de vivre about them. This is something that they carry with them because they're a lawyer.
Right.
So how much did that meet up with reality after you started practicing?
I would say in no way at all. So, I
swear I wasn't leading the witness on that question. I swear it was an open-ended. I wanted to hear it. Yeah.
I mean, other than, me still thinking I'm cool, right? That part. But, everything on TV and in the movies is, litigation and courtrooms. And even when I first started, I did very little of that. When I did do it, I realized I didn't like it all that much. Oh. And nowadays, today, if I go to court once every 2 months, that's a lot. So, kind of the vision I had in my head back then really didn't meet what I ended up doing. And, for a long time, I was a general practitioner and I did some litigation work, realized, people fighting over things was never really anything that I was interested in. Once I kind of had some experience with it, I was never interested in criminal work. It just wasn't my cup of tea. And, once I found my niche, in estate planning, which, came about a lot having to do with my family and my grandparents. Once I found that and decided this was going to be my life's work, I realized that I'm able to help people, without having to go inside the courtroom and make arguments with people. So that part of it never really came into my life at all.
I mean, so that's always the interesting thing whenever I'm talking with, in particular, estate planners or contract attorneys, IP attorneys, where there's a lot less time in court because so many of them did go into law school imagining, and by the way, this is actually a really good teaching point for everyone who's listening, because if you, the person going to law school, imagine being a lawyer as being a litigator, tying it to the courthouse. Imagine what the general public thinks about lawyers. Like, even though you're an estate planner, the general public probably looks at you, Mike, and goes, I'll bet he's a mean SOB in court, right? They're still going to make that tie-in to the courtroom if you're a successful lawyer. Okay, so you're not a litigator. You're starting to do estate planning work, and you're starting to work at what point under your own name?
I have had my own firm since 2006. So going, God, I don't even want to add up how many years that is, but
it's 17
right?
years.
So there we go. So 17 years with my own firm. It started as just me in a room staring at the phone and begging it to ring. I was doing a lot of real estate work, which paid the bills, but I didn't love it. Very transactional. So you meet someone, you talk to them for a few weeks, they close on their house and they go their separate way, and you don't typically communicate much with them again. And I didn't like the transactional nature of it. I knew I enjoyed estate planning and I liked the work. But at the beginning, when I was new and just like I said, staring at the phone and trying to, will that phone to ring as a new business owner, I was kind of stuck in a rut a little bit when it comes to, I don't want to dump the real estate work because it pays the bills. And that's my safety net. And I'm afraid to go out there without that safety net, even though this really isn't the work that I want to devote my life to. But, I had two young kids at the time, a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. And so I was playing it safe. And I did that for a while, until I kind of got up the guts and, my wife's pushing me to, no, you can do this. Focus on what you want to do. So.
Okay. So at some point you start going away from the general practitioner mold. You start heading towards estate planning. So that's already something in there is a business decision. It's not a legal decision. It's a business decision. So let's talk about that. Let's zoom in on that part of the identity transition. What happened there?
So absolutely. And one of the things I tell people a lot is I didn't necessarily choose estate planning. Estate planning chose me because I was always interested in the work and I enjoyed it. But years ago, while I was going along, doing my thing, some real estate, some wills and trusts, my grandfather got sick. He started showing signs of dementia and Alzheimer's. And it got to the point where my grandmother said, okay, I can't take care of him alone anymore. I need help. We need to move into an assisted living or some other type of living situation where I have help because I can't do it by myself. And so, I have a big Italian family. Everybody's close. And my grandmother's looking at me saying, I'm the only lawyer in my family. What can we do? We have a home. We have our savings. My grandfather worked as a custodian for the school system in Massachusetts. He drove a cab. He worked very, very hard. And they had, a home that was paid off and they had some savings. And my grandmother looking at me saying, what do we do here? Do we have to spend every dime we've ever made over the course of our entire lives in order to take care of Papa? And she said, if that's what we have to do, that's what we'll do. But is there any way to, protect or save some of what we've earned over, our entire lifetimes? They were 90 years old at the time. And I looked at my grandmother and I said, you know what, Nana, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And at that point, I took every class. I read every book. Went to every seminar. I learned everything I could about estate planning, elder planning, long-term care, Medicaid. And I used that to help my grandparents. So you could say that my grandparents were my first elder law clients, you know?
Wow.
And I realized there, again, I enjoyed the work. I realized that there were tons of families out there that were in the same position as my family, where someone needs long-term care and no one knows what to do. No one knows what's available for benefits. No one knows anything about protecting their assets or their home or how that works. It's just a big, huge maze of confusion. And I said, there are lots of families out there that are entering this maze. They don't know which way to go. I could really be a help to these people. I realized that enough folks had to be in this same boat that I could make a career of that. And that's where kind of the business decision part comes in, because I had always worried about, if I drop the real estate and start doing estate stuff and elder planning, is there enough work there? Can I generate enough work to run the business on? And, thinking through what my grandparents were going through, I said, yeah, there are tons of people that are dealing with this. I figured it out from, again, the seminars I was going to and classes I was taking, and realizing there are lots of folks that need this help. So that's when I decided everything else in my practice was going to go. I was going to finish up what I was doing, but I was taking no other matters other than estate planning and elder planning. And I said, I'm going to give this a real shot. I could always go back if I needed to. And that was 13, 14 years ago. I've never looked back. I have always looked at it as, hey, this was a help to my grandparents, and they've both since passed on. But when I see people that are in their position and they come in, I'm reminded every day of my grandparents, and I say, I'm trying to make them proud and help people that are in the same circumstances that they were. So just realizing, hey, there's a market out there for this. There's a need. And there are enough, clients, there are enough customers out there that need this, that I can make a living doing this.
You took one of the scarier leaps, Mike, which is you said, I'm going to remove this other portion of my practice, which of course I would imagine at the time made up a fairly significant percentage of your revenue, and said, I'm going all in here. What effect did that have on all of it? Marketing, mindset, management, any of it? What effect did that have on you?
So at the time I had one employee, so it was me and one part-time assistant. Now I will say I have to give credit where credit is due, meaning I was kind of leaning over the ledge on this. And really, when I say I decided to do this, it was my wife that gave me that boot off the ledge, because we would talk about it and I'd say, this is really what I want to do. But again, it means dropping the real estate part of my practice, which paid the bills. Yeah. It was a huge piece of what I was doing. And so having a discussion with her and saying, this is how we provide for our family and for our two young kids. And, once I cut that out, trying to rebuild that income from somewhere, it's going to take time. It's going to be difficult. And, I'm nervous about it. And she was really the one that said, you can do this. And you're going to be happier doing it. You're not happy doing what you're doing, running around dealing with the real estate stuff and getting calls from real estate brokers at 7 or 8 o'clock at night and on Christmas Eve and all that stuff. And so she said, you can do this. If you commit to it and you set your mind to it, you can do it. And I needed that little extra piece of confidence that I wasn't quite getting on my own. She added that piece, and that's when I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And it really caused me to have to shift my mindset, because I wasn't really doing any marketing. On the real estate side, I had banks and lenders that I worked with. They provided a steady stream of real estate closings every month. I didn't have to continue to market to them. And most of my trust and estate type clients were coming through word of mouth from, other parents at my kids' school. But it wasn't enough that, without the real estate, I was going to be able to add additional clients without doing some marketing. And so I realized I have to make shift my mindset and my focus a little bit onto letting the world know that I'm here. And that I can help them, because maybe I'm a great lawyer, and if I am, that's awesome. But if no one knows I exist, then they're not going to call. So I had to devote time to that. And again, it's taking off that lawyer hat for a little while, right? I just can't spend all day cranking out documents. I have to make the phone ring, and dedicating the time necessary to learn how to do that, because I knew nothing about marketing in any way whatsoever. I think when I was in law school, marketing was almost looked at as a bad thing. It was always just be a good lawyer, right? Just be a good lawyer, and the clients will come. Well, 100 years ago, maybe that worked. When you had a town with one lawyer in it, right? Nobody had any choice where to go to. That's not right. Like that anymore. So I had to get over that. Okay, marketing is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing for me to tell people, hey, here I am, and that I exist. And I had to figure out how to do that. And it was scary because, like I said, I knew zero about it. So finding the time and really taking those steps to start reading and learning about it was what I had to do to make that phone ring. Just staring at it wasn't gonna work and make it ring. So
we all want that magic power. So yes, I want to zoom in on something that maybe doesn't get discussed as much, which is that relationship between you and your wife. That is really interesting because she's such a partner in that way to you, urging you on, helping you upgrade as an entrepreneur. Now, I'm really curious. Is this a skill set, that type of communication? Is that a skill set that the two of you developed together, or was that there from the beginning?
I think it was there from the beginning. I think, my wife has, probably to a fault, just this belief that my husband can do anything he sets his mind to, and she believes it. And then I'm like, you're nuts. I think I could tell her tomorrow that I'm going to be an astronaut, and she'd say, you'd make a great astronaut. So part of it might not even be founded in reality, but no, seriously, with our livelihood and our kids' livelihood on the line, she believed that if I focused on it and set my mind to it, that I could do it. If she had any reservations about it, she would have been honest with me about it, but she did not. She gave me that push. But I think that, so I've been with my wife for 27 years, since college. We've been married for 22 years. So, that communication, maybe when we were young, or met when we were 19 years old,
sure,
maybe took a little bit of time to kind of develop. But once we were in our kind of young adult years, even before we were married, 21, 22, we've always kind of had that, this is a partnership, and we're going to talk about these decisions, and we're going to weigh in on them and give each other our honest, opinions about what we're going to do with our lives. And once we had kids, again, it stopped being about us, and, making sure that we had the means to provide for our children in the way that, she and I didn't have growing up. Neither my wife or I grew up in households that had, a lot of money, and, we weren't poor by any means, but, I knew that I wanted to give my kids more if I could. And so my wife was aware of that. It's something we talked about when we decided we were going to start a family. And she really honestly felt that, no, if you practice in an area that's going to make you happy, you're going to do better. And the money and the income and all that stuff is going to follow, and you're going to be happier doing it. And we're going to be able to provide a good life for our kids. So, that's what it was about.
That's amazing. I mean, truly having that type of backing is incredible. Now, I'm really curious to dig even a layer deeper. How much does that simultaneous, so that permission to go and achieve, how much does that both excite and potentially scare you because of the responsibility and the burden?
I think it had kind of it made me very excited because I knew I wanted to do it, but the fact that she was so sure, it took away the misgivings that I had. So that scary factor, while, yeah, you're walking the tightrope there without a net. So there's always some of that, right?
Yeah.
But I think if I was on the scared scale was a 10 at first, she knocked that number way down, because she had that confidence in me to be able to do it and succeed at it. And I said, okay, I sometimes I trust her opinion more than I trust my own. she says I can do it, I can, and we're going to be okay. And there was a lot of that early on where I'd say, this month isn't shaping up to be what I wanted, and I don't know that the revenue is going to be where I want it to be this month, and I'm nervous about it. And she would always say, "You're going to be fine. It's going to work out. We'll be fine." So even when I had those kind of halfway through the month, and I'm saying this month isn't looking great, she'd say, "It's going to work out. It's going to be okay." And the longer I did it, she would say to me, "You always say that, and it always works out. The first week of the month, you say this to me all the time, and you always manage to make it work out by the end of the month. It's going to be okay." And I had to buy into that, and that took down that fear level.
That's one of the amazing things about having people in your corner who help you see the long arc. Because isn't it true that just as entrepreneurs, we so easily just see the last week, the last month? I mean, even learning to think in the arc of a quarter, much less thinking about the overall arc of a year. It's such a difficult thing to do. Now, speaking to the transition of lawyer to CEO, that's obviously part of the thought process. So as you've started to transform your own mindset with that, what are some of the shifts that you've had to make as you go from lawyer to the CEO brain?
Absolutely. One of the biggest things that I had difficulty with at the beginning and had to kind of learn over time was the idea of letting go, right? If I'm not going to be the one doing everything, if I'm going to hire other attorneys or other staff to do certain things for me, I have to give them the tools and the training and then trust them to go do it, right? And after doing everything myself for so long, and my eyes are on everything, and I see every document, and I talk to every client and do every phone call, it's not easy to let go of those reins and trust someone else, to give them the ball and have them run with it. So that part was hard. I'm better at it now, but at first I still wanted to see everything, right? So I got somebody doing this work, and then I still want to look at it and see it and everything before anything goes out the door. And I wasn't saving myself any time, doing it that way. Or I'd have a tendency to want to just fix something myself instead of using that as an opportunity to teach someone, hey, have we thought about doing it this way? Oh, it's faster if I just fix it myself and type it and, get it out the door. And I had to learn that teaching and training someone else to do things the right way, or at least my way, really would save me time in the long run, because I wouldn't have to keep, reviewing everything. And I had to fight that urge to make changes myself. But that letting go and putting trust in someone else with my name on the line was very hard. And that took me a while.
So inevitably, the question arises when this gets discussed with law firm owners is, how do you deal with the moment when someone who you trust does do it in a way that you look at it and go, that is, in my opinion, the wrong way? What do you do in that moment?
In those types of situations, if I really feel like it's the wrong way, I'm careful, first of all. I know I don't criticize people in front of the rest of the team or the rest of the staff. That I'm very much in favor of the praise in public, criticize in private. So in that situation, I would call that person in to speak to me privately. I would search for that person's reasoning about why they did it a certain way, and want to hear what they're coming from. And I try to say, well, look, this is the way I do it. I'm clear about the why. Here's the reason. No, it's not just because I said so, or because I've always done it that way. I feel it should be done this way because here's what it accomplishes, A, B, and C. And do you see that the way it's done right now doesn't accomplish those things? So I want it to be a discussion and a teaching moment, and where I'm more persuading them over to my way of thinking, having them understand why we do it a certain way, and then hopefully agree and say, yeah, you know what, that's right, and that makes sense. Rather than, this is how I want it done and that's it. When I first started and I was a new attorney and I worked at a small firm, I very much liked the guys that I was working for. It was two attorneys, but it was it was my way or the highway. And if you don't like it,
Yeah.
there's the door. And there was no explanation about why we were doing anything, or it was just, this is how it's done and that's it. No discussion. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hear any differing points of view. There it is. And hey, if you don't like your job, you know where the door is and I can put someone else in your seat. And I said, I am never going to run my business that way. And so I tried very hard to not emulate that part of the environment that was around when I started. So I try to very much just have a discussion about this stuff.
I mean, so that's a really beneficial framework to everyone for sure. That idea of how do you handle those moments. So you give, in my experience with you, Mike, you give people a relatively long leash overall. And there are some firm owners who look at that and go, okay, that's awesome. That's a really good thing. I need to do more of that. There are other firm owners who may wonder, well, what about enforcement and policies, procedures, KPIs, the numerical stuff? How do you balance out the numbers with with what you just talked about in terms of the overall caretaking of the individual and the trust?
Sure. And it's not always easy. All right. Especially at the beginning. If I've got a new employee and we have KPIs, we have our numbers, we know what everybody's, supposed to be doing, I definitely give them more leeway at the beginning. All right. Because they're training, they're learning the way we do things here at my office, our processes, everything from our software to the way we deal with our clients. Right. And so there's a learning curve there. So while I would love for every new employee to come in and start hitting their numbers the first month that they're with us, I know that that's, very unlikely to happen. So at the beginning, during training, I'd say that especially the first 90 days, we don't talk much as far as numbers. I'm not really holding them accountable for numbers during that first period. After 90 days go by, if I feel like that person is trained and they have the knowledge and the tools to do things the right way and have the correct understanding and mindset at that point, now we're talking about, all right, there's going to be some accountability here for our KPIs, our numbers, all that stuff, because, training is done, playtime is over. And now we're going to have accountability. So I'm clear about that with all of our new hires that, we've got our training period, but once training is done, it's time to have accountability for our numbers and make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do. And while I do like to have open discussions with my employees, we have processes that have to be followed. And my expectation is that they will be followed. That's the way that we're going to succeed. I have put a lot of our policies and procedures in place based on mistakes that I've made over the last 20 years, right? So I say to especially a younger employee, we have the benefit of the mistakes that I've made over the last 20 years that you don't have to make. I can prevent you from making those mistakes. This is how we do it. We follow the policy. So it's a balancing act. More accountability, but at the same time, no one being so afraid to make a mistake that they're sitting in their office terrified all the time. My opinion on mistakes is own it, learn from it, move on, and on to the next thing. And as long as I'm not seeing the same mistake made over and over again, then I look at the mistakes like a learning opportunity. I want them to take accountability, want them to own that mistake, learn from it, and we're on to the next thing.
There you go. It's like an NFL quarterback. You throw the interception, your job is to learn from it, but you can't walk back out onto the field scared of throwing the next interception, because that guarantees that you'll throw the next interception, right? And that's hard. For a team member that does fail, for everyone listening, for a team member that does fail, that's a tough balancing act. It's hard to coach. It's often part of someone's character. But if they start playing scared, that's where you're going to see a lot more mistakes happen, because their emotional energy is completely wasted on fear rather than on delivering a great product. I mean, gosh, Mike, in your practice area, obviously the precision of a contract, little things like person's name has got to be spelled right. The address has got to be, like, these little things are all of the potential holes through which, when it's time to execute the contract, trouble gets created. And that's obviously big, all those processes and systems. So you talk about having trust in people, balancing it out against the processes. What else as you transition into the CEO brain is important to you?
I think that a number of things, but finding the right people, which sometimes I've been successful at it. Sometimes I haven't. I've had people that I thought were going to be the right fit, and they just weren't.
But let me say real quick, Mike, on your behalf, that you've gotten so much better at when you find someone who might be the right fit, turns out not to be a great fit. Your speed of execution on, okay, it's time to turn the position over, has gotten so much better over the years. I want to speak directly to that. Like, I'm just totally interrupting you here, but that's how you and I talk. So how did that change, that ability to, all right, this isn't going to work out, it is time to move on?
It came from owning my mistakes, learning, and moving on. So I've made the mistakes in the past of allowing too much time, of knowing in my heart and in my head, hey, this probably isn't going to work out, but I like this person. They're a good person. They mean well. I'm going to give them more time, and I'm going to give them more time, and maybe they're going to get it. I still think they're going to get it. I'm going to keep trying and trying and trying. And, that little voice in my head is saying, the better thing for this person is to go elsewhere and thrive. They're never going to thrive here. And cutting them loose is really doing them a favor, because they're not going to be in a position where they're happy or thriving here. But for a long time, I just would let that go too long. And I was doing a disservice to the firm. I was doing a disservice to the individual, because I had them stuck in this position where I knew they weren't going to excel. And over time, I realized I'm not helping anybody doing it that way. If I know this person just isn't going to get it, it's just not the right fit. This job and the skills required for this job aren't right for this person. It's ripping off the Band-Aid is better for everyone involved than keeping them here longer. And for me, continuing to pay someone and paying them to essentially not be able to do the job. It's not business wise. It's just not a good decision at all. And I'm not giving them the opportunity to go find their place elsewhere. And so I just had to make that decision. I'm not going to do this anymore. If I know that the person isn't gonna be able to be a fit here or thrive here, we tear that Band-Aid off quickly.
Okay, so you talk about making business decisions. That's obviously a vitally important skill for a law firm owner, and it speaks, I think, really well to the division between being the lawyer and being the CEO. How are you doing in terms of, and maybe how are you doing, the leaving behind part of your lawyer identity and getting comfortable with the focus on I'm an owner of a business that produces a legal service identity?
Sure. And that took time as well. All right. And again, being able to let go and being able to have other people perform the tasks that I was always performing is a big part of it. In other words, if I don't have trust in my team to execute, well, then I'm still stuck in that lawyer role because I've got to oversee everything. But if I know my team members can execute, they can do it without me. Some cases they can do it better than me. Then I know I've got the freedom to step back and run the business and not have to be involved so much in the lawyering or kind of the day-to-day parts of my practice, because I have trust and faith in my employees, to do that. I'm super lucky. My chief strategy officer, Nicole, who's been with me, she's in her 5th year with me, is fantastic. I call her my work wife. And she's the other one that, like my wife gives me that nudge at home, Nicole gives me that nudge here. So even sometimes when that kind of control freak in me starts to creep back in, and I'll say, hey, what about this? What about this? Nicole will say to me, let it go. Go back and do what you like to do. This stuff is gonna be okay. and, trust the team to handle these parts of it. So I just got to remind me every once in a while, but being able to trust the team to do things and me not have to worry about it is what gives me the time freedom to do the stuff that I enjoy, like working on the marketing and writing content and overall kind of business strategy, meeting with our referral partners. That's all the stuff that I like to do. Giving seminars, talking to big groups about estate planning and how we can improve their lives. That's what gives me energy, not so much the drafting wills and trusts, anymore. And as long as I can be certain that others can do that and do it right, it really allows me to step away from it and focus on what I want to focus on.
That whole finding joy, boy, oh boy, do I love hearing that particular language. That sounds like a true fundamental shift in values from doing the legal work to enjoying the business work. What made you fall in love with that side of owning a law firm?
I think it was when I started to learn about doing the marketing and how do I get people to call? How do I get people in the door? And I started working on writing content, writing articles and blogs and things that were fun, maybe a little bit of humor in them to take a subject that either, some people find boring or some people, find morbid because we're talking about people that pass away, and being able to make it funny or fun and put that kind of spin on it. And having to use some creativity to say, how do I take, someone's death and turn it into something that someone wants to read about? And so learning how to do that and saying, okay, I wrote this article and you know what? It really came out. I like it a lot and it's funny and it's fun, but it still has this serious undertone and showing people that what, how I can help them and what we do is important. And I love that part of it. And that was when I said, I enjoy this a heck of a lot more than I enjoy drafting a trust. And this is what I want to, what I want to spend my time on. And the same thing goes for giving seminars. I love talking to groups of people, educating them about estate planning, helping them, providing information and insight, and getting other people to be excited about it and focus on it. It's one of those things that gives me energy instead of draining it. So, I could go talk at a seminar for hours because I just like doing it, and it revs me up. It gives me joy, which things like, litigation that I did when I first started was a drain. It just sucked the life out of me. And this is the opposite.
Oh, I mean, that's the whole point, right? You don't open a business in order to be subject to the business's whims and wills. You opened a business for you to exert your own whim and will on the world. So what's next for you in this journey of becoming the CEO?
So the more and more that I can hire and develop the best possible team, the more that I can dial back on my, wearing my lawyer hat, because right now I'm still wearing it sometimes. And what I want going forward is me to have to hardly put that hat on in any given week, if at all, right? So I want to continue to grow. I want to continue to bring in A+ team members, provide great service to the client. I want to have not the biggest, but the best estate planning firm in Massachusetts, provide the best service, have the best lawyers, and at the same time, allow me to focus on what I'm good at, use the skills that I have to talk to people, bring clients in, let others do the lawyering, and, allow me to do what I like to do. And right now, I'm still doing a little bit of that lawyering. I'm still having to wear that lawyer hat sometimes, but I'd like to almost put that hat in the closet and, maybe pull it out once a season and that's it. So I want to continue to grow the firm. I'd like to add at least another one more location here in Massachusetts so that we can, help an even larger geographic area and really, just get myself out of that lawyer mode, focus solely being the CEO and running the business, developing a great team, and maybe at some point, getting my daughter in here to take over for me someday.
There you go. There you go. All right, Mike, last trio. One question, 3 answers to it. What are you reading, watching, and listening to these days?
Okay, so reading, I'm always reading a ton of stuff. The book that I just finished is called A CEO Only Does 3 Things. And I saw the title and it kind of spoke to me because I said, all right, I like that. Wearing that, I want to wear the CEO hat. And it was a book just specifically written towards this is what a CEO should be doing, regardless of what type of business you're in. So I'm reading that, and I'm always reading one of Dan Kennedy's no BS marketing books. Even when I finish them,
Awesome.
I pull another one out. The Marketing to the Affluent, Marketing to Boomers and Seniors. Even when I finish them, in between, I pull one out again and reread it.
Oh yeah.
And then I read Stephen King. I read Stephen King for fun. But
awesome.
Those books are what I'm always kind of tearing into. As far as what I'm watching, usually, this is okay. Back to that team effort. My wife and I, what are we watching on TV? So we just finished watching the series, the Continental, which is part of the John Wick universe, and it was kind of a 3-part miniseries. That was really, really cool. We always watch Below Deck for some just kind of mindless.
There we go. That's an honest answer. That's what that is.
Right? Just some mindless reality TV and just watch other people screw up and just nothing really redeeming about it. So we're always watching that stuff, and then my son and I watch The Walking Dead.
There you go. One of the most expanded universes on television these days.
Yeah.
And then what are you listening to?
So I am listening to, I listen to podcasts. So I listen to yours. I always listen to Ben Glass's podcast. Ben's son Brian has a podcast. I always listen to that. There's another one that I listened to recently, and the name makes it sound fresher than it is. It's called Dying for Sex, and it was about a young woman that was diagnosed with cancer and how she decided that she was going to live her life the way she wanted, stop living her life based on everyone else's expectations because she had terminal cancer. She knew that her time on this earth was limited. And how she said, I'm going to live my life my way and go out and have experiences that I want to have, regardless of what anybody else might think about it. And it was really good. And that's
wow.
a cool podcast that I wouldn't listen to it with the kids around because there is some, there is some romantic stuff in there. But it's really good.
That is awesome. Mike, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom, my friend. Always a joy to talk with you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Charlie, for having me. This was fantastic. Thanks so much.
All right, everyone. We'll see you on the next episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School.